He certainly has tried very hard and so far successfully to keep it from leaking out. It must be.
Madam Secretary, Washington State, the Evergreen State, where the people support law enforcement by allowing them to pursue criminals, where the people support families and children by putting into law a Parents' Bill of Rights, where the people reform taxes so that families and young people and small businesses can thrive. Washington State casts all of its 43 votes for the next president, the past president, Donald J. Trump.
Madam Chair, I'm Coach Senator Tommy Tuberville and proud to represent the great state of Alabama, one of the most pro-military and pro-veteran states in the country. Huntsville, Alabama has sent somebody to the moon for the United States in the past. We will do it again in the very near future. We stand for the flag and kneel for God.
Amen.
Madam Chair, we proudly cast our 50 delegates for the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Woohoo!
By former President Trump, he has selected Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his vice presidential pick, and this is what he writes. After lengthy deliberation and thought, and considering the tremendous talents of many others, I have decided that the person best suited to assume the position of Vice President of the United States is J.D. Vance of the great state of Ohio. So let's talk about this with our great panel that we have assembled here in Milwaukee. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Dr. Ben Carson, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the prior Trump administration, and he's founder and chairman of American Cornerstone Institute, and former Secretary of State and former CIA Director Mike Pompeo, also a Fox News contributor. So let's go around the horn. Mr. Mike Pompeo, good to see you.
Great to be with you.
Let's start with you. This is big breaking news. What's your reaction?
Big news, a great pick. He'll be a fantastic vice president and is prepared to lead America if that's what's called upon. And I was very confident that I didn't know who it was, but whoever it was would be better than the current vice president, and he has way hit that bar. I'm excited. I'm excited about the ticket, and I'm excited about what this means for America in the years to come.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy, there was a lot of buzz around Glenn Youngkin as well, who I know you have said you felt would be an excellent pick. What's your reaction to this choice?
It's still a good choice, too. Remember, the president gets to put a team together. So it's not just the vice president. You get a team. And it's like a good to great. You got to get the right people on the bus. JD is going to really help him in Pennsylvania, especially right being that close to Ohio. JD picked up on, after being a Marine, he also knows the challenges when it comes to drugs. He knows what it is to rural areas get wiped out from jobs, kind of the American First policy. So and he brings youth to it at the same time. So it's going to be a new approach coming in.
He sure does. He's 39 years old, J.D. Vance. Dr. Ben Carson, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
You served in the last administration. Your thoughts on this pick? You served with Vice President Mike Pence.
Yes.
Very different pick. Very different ideology. Very different guy, frankly.
Yes, well, I was very pleased with this pick. I read J.D. Vance's book, and the things that he's been through gives him a very wide spectrum of the American society to deal with. And I think he'll be a very good pick. He's very articulate. He's very smart. He's young. He's energetic. And quite frankly, you know, we are so fortunate that Donald Trump survived over the weekend. He will win no matter who is his vice president. But having the extra of somebody like J.D. Vance, I think is icing on the cake.
Brett, your reaction?
Well, Vice
presidential choice is an opportunity and a test. And the first test is this someone the American public can look at and say, now that person could be president tomorrow? Because we now have learned over the weekend just how quickly that can happen. He's 39 years old, is J.D. Vance. He's very bright. He's dazzlingly articulate, as Dr. Carson suggested. It's not entirely clear to me that people look at him and say, now that's a president, which is something you need. The other thing is, of course, what does he give the president in terms of appeal to voters that the president doesn't already have? Often these choices are made to unite a party. The president doesn't have to worry about that. This party's united behind him for sure. So the question I would have is, does J.D. Vance, with his sort of new Republican, new conservative profile, and voters looking around to see what kind of a president President Trump would be? Not entirely clear to me that he does, but he's got a lot of talent. He'll run rings around Kamala Harris in any debate.
We'll look forward to that. Now we know what that's going to look like. I believe Senator Mike Lee is speaking right now on the floor. Yeah.
I need you to move over just a little bit.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and rules and procedures of this convention, Utah, 40 votes, President Trump. Maryland, 37 delegates.
Madam Secretary, my name is David Bossie. Maryland, the old line state, the seventh state to enter the Union, known for the amazing Chesapeake Bay and Blue Crab, and the United States Naval Academy. The home of Fort McHenry, the historic site that inspired the Star-Spangled Banner, and the home of the next United States Senator from Maryland, Larry Hogan. Maryland proudly casts our 37 votes for my friend, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald John Trump.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and the rules.
Continue our discussion with our panel. They are counting the delegates. They need to get to 12:15. You can see in the upper right-hand side of your screen. When that happens, that's going to be Florida. You know, they can do this in any order they want. And Florida is the President Trump's home state. His son Eric Trump will be standing at the podium for Florida and will announce the 12:15 that puts his father over the top and into the nomination once again for a third time as the nominee of the Grand Old Party. So we will absolutely take that live. We want to continue to get reaction here on set to this huge announcement of the vice presidential candidate on his side, alongside him, and that will be J.D. Vance. Mike Pompeo, I wonder what President Zelensky's reaction is to this news, because J.D. Vance is seen as an isolationist, someone who does not want to strongly support Ukraine and send the money their way. What do you think his reaction is?
Look, I think in the end, President Zelensky understands that just as we did in our first 4 years, President Trump's first 4 years, we always put America first. And I think the vision that President Trump will have will continue to do that. Look, we all know $61 billion was an awful lot of money to provide to the Ukrainians. More important was that President Biden got those set of policies wrong, right? We provided the weapons but didn't let them fire to actually effectively use them. We put enormous constraints on the capacity of Ukraine to actually defend itself. And I think President Trump will clean that up, and I think J.D. Vance will support that.
Aisha Hasmi has Governor Mike DeWine, who now has a Senate selection to make on his plate. Aisha, down to you.
Hey there, Martha. I'm with Governor Mike DeWine from the great state of Ohio, where his senator was just picked to be Trump's VP candidate. Governor, give me your initial reaction. You had a good feeling when you talked to me earlier.
Well, this is very exciting. Look to have the vice presidential candidate, and we believe the next vice president from the state of Ohio is a great thing for our state. Ohio is the heart of it all, as we say. Now we're going to be the heart of the vice president.
You said to me earlier that you were already looking for a replacement for J.D. Vance. You were already thinking about it. Did you just have a gut feeling that it might be him?
Well, I said I was thinking about it.
You had some names in mind, maybe.
Look, I think it's much too early. We have races to win. Bernie Moreno, who's right behind me, running for the United States Senate. We're very focused on that race. We've got Supreme Court races in Ohio we're focused on. So we'll get to that after we cross the bridge, and that'll be the election.
Tell Americans at home that maybe don't know very much about J.D. Vance. He's brand new to politics, a freshman senator. There's a big book out there about his story. There's a movie out there. But for those folks out there, middle-class Americans, that want to know what he brings to the table, what can you tell those Americans about him?
First of all, he's a new generation. He's the future generation. I think that's very appropriate for the vice president. We've seen that happen many, many times throughout the history of this country. Second, his life experiences. He doesn't have a great deal of experience in politics. I think some people probably like that. But his life experiences are what I think are very important. He served in the military. Someone who came from a very difficult background. He's risen. He's succeeded in everything he's ever done in his life. Extremely articulate. Anyone who's watched him on TV, he has the ability to articulate his positions exceedingly well. All those things are great for a vice presidential candidate.
You know, the former president had said over and over again, especially after the events of this weekend, that he needed somebody to he needed a VP candidate that could step in and become president day one. Is J.D. Vance that man? Is he ready to take office and to lead this country if, God forbid, that day were to come?
Well, we hope that day doesn't come. We hope the president gets elected and serves his 4 years. But look, extremely intelligent. He's someone who gets things really quickly. And again, I'll go back to the life experiences. I think this fits what people want to see today. Someone who has had experiences that matter. You know, the Republican Party to be able to appeal, as it has really under Donald Trump, to working men and women is vitally important. J.D. can do that.
Are you going to call him soon?
You know, I've gone back and forth. So.
Okay, you're testing each other. Governor, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Martha, back to you.
Thank you, Aisha. Stay tuned. We have Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump on the floor as we're getting close to 12:15, and you can see the Trump family down there gathered in the Florida delegation, and we're going to keep a close eye on that. We're at 1,002 right now. The number that's going to put them over the top is 12:15, so we're going to stay fluid and make sure that we are on that as soon as it happens. Kevin McCarthy, you know, as you watch this scene play out here, it is historic to have Donald Trump about to clinch the nomination for his party a third time. We have never seen this play out before, and it is quite extraordinary. Or FDR got it, but that's a long time ago. So your thoughts on what we're about to witness?
You know, I've witnessed all the ones before. President Trump is stronger today than he was at any other time, even as sitting as president. And I think this is a unique time when he's talking about uniting the country. I think he's talking about expanding this party, going to places that Republicans probably haven't won before, and looking in states that normally you haven't seen since Ronald Reagan had an opportunity. And that's an excitement. I think J.D. can help with that, being younger, being able to be out there more. And it's going to be a combination.
Let's go down to the floor and listen in. This is Elise Stefanik, and Florida is next. Let's just take all this in.
21st Congressional District, House Republican Conference Chair, on behalf of the 91 New York delegates to the Republican National Convention, we proudly cast all 91 votes for President Donald J. Trump.
Fantastic.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and the rules and procedures of this convention, New York, 91 votes, President Trump. Florida. Florida, 125 delegates.
Madam Secretary, and everybody in this great city. On behalf of our entire family, and on behalf of the 125 delegates in the unbelievable state of Florida, we hereby nominate every single one of them for the greatest president that's ever lived, and that's Donald J. Trump. Hereby declaring him the Republican nominee for President of the United States of America.
Praise the Lord, and pass the ammunition of godly principles. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in Jesus' sight.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and the rules and procedures of this convention, Florida, 125 votes, President Trump. We will now continue with the roll call of the states. Puerto Rico, 23 delegates.
Madam Chairman, I'm Ángel Cintrón, State Chairman for the Republican Party of Puerto Rico, the great 51st Republican State of the Union, Puerto Rico.
Okay, there you have it, the big moment. Former President Donald Trump is now the nominee for the Republican Party, which we have known for quite some time, but it is now official. And it's hard not to look at the members of his family, Don Jr., Eric, Trump, his daughter, all of them down there, putting him over the top in this nomination. And remember that less than 48 hours ago, he was shot in an assassination attempt. It's just a stunning moment in political history. I mean, this is a family that could have been mourning the loss of their father if it weren't for a millimeter of distance of gunfire that was shot at him. And not only did he keep this thing going on time, but it is a pace. And it looks like will make an appearance here tonight. So, I mean, this is a moment that I think it's hard to not take in, given the events of the last 48 hours. Karl Rove, welcome to the table. Your thoughts?
There's our Senator, Mitch McConnell.
Andrew Jackson, Richard Nixon, and now Donald Trump, the only Americans that I'm aware of that I can recall who have been the nominee of their party.
President Trump. Hawaii, 19 delegates.
Aloha mai kako. We are the delegation from the beautiful...
Changed dramatically over the past 48 hours as well.
It does, and it has been something of a political task for Mitch McConnell to adapt himself to the reality that Donald Trump is going to be the nominee again. There was a very strained relationship between them for most of Mr. Trump's presidency. It was pretty clear that Mitch McConnell didn't think much of some of the candidates for the Congress and for the Senate in particular that Donald Trump backed. They seemed, for the moment at least, to compose their differences. They even shook hands, which, considering particularly what Mr. Trump had said about Senator McConnell, one might have thought would have happened, but it has. So, under the circumstances, the party seems to be about as united as we could expect, given a nominee who at one time was considered, an outcast almost within his own party, at least among the party establishment.
There was an observation made, Mike Pompeo, about the shift in politics in Politico today, and it was talking about the fact that for a long time, Donald Trump unified the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party was divided over him. And that reversed over the course of the last 2 days. Now you have a Democratic Party that is divided over whether or not Joe Biden should be their nominee, and you have a Republican Party that has been united by what was almost a very dark tragedy.
Yeah, Martha, I think that's absolutely true. Not only is the party divided about who their nominee ought to be, but it's divided about should we support Israel, how should we think about the economy. They are deeply divided on their policies as well, and I think the Republican Party, and we have diverse views. We've had diverse views inside of our party for an awfully long time. I think now we can see a clear path. I remember when I was elected for the first time in 2010, the big Tea Party class of 2010 when I came to Congress. It was another moment where there was clarity about how we thought about how we were going to take care of Americans. And I think President Trump has united us in that same way. There'll still be people with different views on lots of things, but we have a direction and a pathway forward that I think that will appeal to a large number of Americans come November of this year.
Kevin McCarthy, I'm struck by the fact that one of the things that our reporting tells us was very important to former President Trump in terms of the VP pick was loyalty, and someone who could carry his movement, as he put it, forward. J.D. Vance was not loyal for a long time to the former president. He said some very unkind things about him, but then he sort of came around. And I always remember this moment during the Senate race where the president said, well, J.D.'s still kissing my ass. And I thought, can these two people find their way back together? But apparently, J.D. Vance has convinced him that he's loyal.
J.D. Vance wouldn't have been a senator if it wasn't for President Trump's endorsement. So, I also think the president looks for a team. And the one unique thing about the president, there's a lot of people who have come back, who've been against him. There's a lot of people who have never been for him that have now found their way to be there. I've watched it in the donor community. I watched it outside. He's getting endorsements in the last 48 hours. People have probably never endorsed a Republican before. And that's the uniqueness. I think it's something special about the president, that somebody could have been against him, and he brings you back around. He puts you back.
He wants everyone to love him, ultimately, right?
The number one thing he has said in the last 48 hours is unite. Unite this nation. And I hope he keeps it. This is about addition, not subtraction. This is about adding new people.
We're going to talk about that a lot as that theme. The former president has said that he wants to talk about unifying this country. But, we're in this moment still about this pick, and I want to stay here for a moment with you, Karl Rove. Is there a electoral advantage for former President Trump with the J.D. Vance pick, in your opinion? What does the electoral map look like, if impacted at all, by this choice?
Well, I think it probably confirms that Ohio is going to be in the Trump column.
But that really wasn't in doubt, was it?
Not in doubt. No, look, there are interesting studies in this. Political scientists have studied this. Since 1960 and Lyndon Johnson, there is no evidence that any vice presidential pick has a durable impact in bringing a state you would otherwise not win, or in affecting durably over the course of the campaign, attracting certain elements. Democrats nominated a woman in 1984. They did no better among the women in 84 than they did in 80 or 88. What it does affect is the perception of the presidential candidate himself. Did he pick somebody who is seen as being capable of being the president in a moment of difficulty for a country? Ronald Reagan says, I'm going to pick my principal opponent in the primary, who was UN ambassador, director of the CIA, ambassador to China, respected member of Congress, successful businessman, and his ratings for leadership and competence go up. Reagan's do. John McCain picks Sarah Palin, iconoclast governor of Alaska, and his ratings go down for competence and leadership because people didn't say she's ready for the top job.
So what do you think the impact is on Trump?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be significant one way or the other, frankly. I think he's picked somebody that he thinks and the family thinks are going to be able to carry on his legacy in 2028. I don't think this is a pick that's going to have significant impact.
Some people may look at this and remember what J.D. Vance used to say about Donald Trump. He was a hardcore never-Trumper not very many years ago. And he reversed himself completely not that long ago. And, one of the things you worry about is when somebody's making a pick of a potential president if something happens to him, then you think, well, is this person, how did he get the job? Did he get it because he was really the best qualified to be president, or did he get it because he sucked up effectively to the nominee? People will have questions about that.
Well, he's definitely close to Donald Trump Jr., who we just saw down there. He has been a huge proponent of J.D. Vance in terms of marshaling support for him with his father. And we were told when we got the schedule for this week that it would be Donald Trump Jr. who would announce on Wednesday night the speech for the vice president, which was a bit of a tell, we can say now, but we weren't 100% sure back then. Quick thought on that element of this story, Brett.
Well, I think the president preserved the suspense of the announcement pretty well. Usually you're doing that because you want somebody to watch the convention, which doesn't mean these days what it once used to mean when you're going to find out who the nominee is. So in many cases, I've been to many conventions where the only story was who's going to be the vice presidential nominee. Well, in this case, there's been so much other news on so many fronts that there's plenty more to talk about. Yeah. But the president held it together pretty well in terms of people not knowing, and now we know. And if you just wait to see how long it is before we forget all about it.
It's always good to have Brett's perspective on these things. We've talked about the possibility of an open convention in August, which of course, as reporters, everybody would be anxious to cover that process. But speaking of that, President Biden has now reacted to the selection of J.D. Vance and has just posted this on social media. Here's what President Biden said. Here's the deal about J.D. Vance. He talks a big game about working people, but now he and Trump want to raise taxes on middle-class families while pushing more tax cuts for the rich. It's very interesting to me, Kevin McCarthy, that this is what President Biden is going at, because he sees the perhaps vulnerability that he has lost touch with working class voters. And here's someone who wrote Hillbilly Elegy about his own experience growing up in the poor sections of Ohio and Pennsylvania, and seeing a lot of drug use and a lot of things that working class people can relate to quite palatably.
Biden has to hold Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is going to be the key state. And he's going to worry about J.D. Vance just living there, going to the trailer parks, reaching other people with his own background. But what you're going to find is, I imagine that tweet would have been different at 48 hours ago, something else happened. He would have been fiercer. He would have talked about something different. The one thing that had maybe been politically positive for Biden, they're no longer talking about replacing him. He will be the nominee. And you watch what he solidified. You know what he's done in 4 years as president, 3 Oval Office talks. They used that shooting as one of them because he wants to solidify his base. But still, only 33% of the Democrats want him for their nominee. He's got a problem for turnout.
McCarthy, thank you. Aisha has Donald Trump Jr. on the floor behind us. A happy Trump family member because he really wanted J.D. Vance to be this pick. Aisha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right.
Don, first of all, huge sorry from the Fox family to what happened to your father. How's he feeling today? Is he ready for what's in store for him this week? And what did you say to him when that first happened?
I literally called him, and him and I have an interesting relationship. My first words out of my mouth were, "You're the biggest badass I've ever seen," and I actually mean that. Right? I sort of just said it. Everyone these days is a tough guy on the internet or on a keyboard, but when you've actually been shot, you can get up, defiant, fist in the air, telling people to stay in the game, to fight. That's exactly the kind of leadership that we need. That's actually a man that's been tested. Everyone thinks they're going to be the tough guy. Most aren't. He is, and I could not have been more impressed with him in that moment. And I've been impressed with him for a long time.
This was an incredibly close call, and the former First Lady Melania Trump, put it so eloquently in her letter that it was so close. Her whole life could have changed. Your life could have changed. What did you feel in that moment when you found out what had happened, when just the first pieces of information were coming in?
Yeah, no, it was very tough because it took me about 90 minutes to actually get anything, right? They had locked everything down. He's in the hospital, and there's no cell phones, I assume, because of potential IED type stuff when they don't know what's going on. So I was I got a call, my father's been shot, and that's the only information you have, and it took about 90 minutes to even find out that he's alive and well. So that was a rough time. And then I spoke to him, and I said what I said. It was sort of even in that moment, he was still having some levity, and he was back in the game, and it was incredible. It was actually a couple hours later when you sit down, you start reading it, you start seeing the videos, you start seeing that's when it was like just the adrenaline dump hits, and it was different. It was it was a life-changing experience.
There's a lot of scrutiny about the Secret Service. There's going to be oversight hearings on Capitol Hill. What do you think happened? Do you think something went wrong? Was he vulnerable?
Listen, I know a lot of those guys, and some of them are incredible patriots. I had a Secret Service detail for 4 years, but I also know, having had it, having been in it, having been both my father as a president, as a candidate, in my own details, someone to get out on an open roof within 130 yards. I'm not going to be the guy to be conspiratorial, but something went wrong.
Should he stop doing those outdoor rallies, perhaps? Maybe is that what you would recommend to him?
I don't think he'd want to stop doing them. I think you see the response.
Maybe, do you want to talk
stop? But I think, we got to guard that perimeter a little bit better. I came from a competitive shooting background. I mean, a 130-yard shot, it's like a 2-foot putt. That's nothing. It doesn't get easier than that. So that was truly divine intervention as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think it's hit him yet? Do you think it's sort of finally settled in for him?
Oh, 100%. I think it's settled in, and he's moving on. The resolve, the defiance that you saw in the seconds after that. He's just going to carry that energy on and fight for our country that way.
He's moving on now with this VP pick, J.D. Vance, who obviously was a favorite of yours. Talk to me about why, and what you told your father.
I just said, listen, he's a guy. Honestly, what it is I watched J.D. go into sort of, let's call it, enemy territory from a media perspective, go on the most liberal TV shows and prosecute the case for my father and against the Democrat lunacy that we've seen. He does that better than almost any of our people can do on more conservative television. And you see that, you see the intelligence, and you hear his life story. That's going to resonate. We have a very tough electoral college map. People are like, oh, it's over now. Nothing's over. It's not over. It's not over till the last ballots close on November 5th, and if the Democrats get their way, they'll drag it on till 2:30, 4 in the morning otherwise. So we have to stay in the game. He's a guy that can go to the Rust Belt, to the places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and articulate that case. He's lived an incredible American dream story, and when more people figure that out, I think they'll see that I was probably really, really correct and sort of my choice.
Do you feel like he can lead? There's been some criticism that he doesn't have enough political experience. He's a freshman senator from Ohio, not enough
executive. Zero political experience. He took peace deals in the Middle East, the greatest job economy in the world, incredible prosperity for everyone with no experience. If experience is a marker for Washington, D.C. politics, it's a bad one. How many people do we see that chair committees that don't know what they're talking about only because they've been there longer? I can go through whether it's Maxine Waters or a bunch of the Democrats, they're in positions of power because they've had tenure, not because they actually know anything about what they're chairing. If experience in politics is anything, I don't think it's very important at all, frankly.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
J.D. Vance is one of your...
All right, very interesting interview with Donald Trump Jr., with our Aisha Hasni down on the floor. And I think that it's so, to hear Donald Trump Jr. speak about the attributes of J.D. Vance, who has been a controversial person within the party, I think, in many ways, it's safe to say, in terms of his approach to Ukraine and his thoughts on Israel and his foreign policy experience, it's central to, I think, some of those debates. But I think we should talk a little bit about this man. For people who are not that familiar with this freshman senator from Ohio, who clearly won over Donald Trump Jr., and he really prosecuted his case with his father and was successful in achieving that. It's interesting to remember that that former President Trump has said that he was so impressed with his son over the last several years, watching him get up on stage and prosecute the case of his philosophy, his political philosophy, the president's, former president's political philosophy. And I think it's fair to say that that has rubbed off. He has, put stock in his son's perspective on this decision. Obviously, he made the decision himself, but I think it's interesting to note, that connection. But J.D. Vance of Ohio was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2022. He's been an author of Hillbilly Elegy, a best-selling book across the country about his hardscrabble upbringing, about his grandmother, encouraging him to learn his math, his troubled mother in many cases, and part of the story. He became an attorney, went to Yale. After high school, he went to the Marines. He was a Marine for 4 years after high school, and then he went to Ohio State, and then after that he got his JD at Yale. It's a very, very impressive story of this young man from Cincinnati, now born in Middletown, Ohio. He is the father of 3 children. His wife is Usha Chilkuri Vance. He's a Roman Catholic and just a very interesting political figure. So let's go down the line and get your thoughts on a little bit deeper dive on this person who has made history today, Carl.
He's made history, and it was made earlier that he won the nomination because he was backed by Donald Trump. In all fairness, a super PAC that I helped create had to spend $35 million to help him in the general election, which he won by 6 points in an open race, while the Republican governor is getting reelected by 25 points. He is an effective advocate, but the difference between being an effective advocate on television and being a practical politician, he's got some work to do there. But he will be a strong advocate for the president's positions on trade. He is a protectionist. He's probably more of an isolationist than the president is. He said, I don't care what happens in Ukraine, but he's going to be an interesting figure that America is going to get to know in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Carl raises, I think, probably the largest issue that Vance has been defined on, and that is his isolationism when it comes to Ukraine. How do you think that impacts President Trump? Does he listen to other people more than that if he's reelected?
Secretary Pompeo can certainly tell you.
Yeah.
Foreign policy is carried out by the Secretary of State is the president's foreign policy. If this is a clue to what President Trump's foreign policy would be, the president has been this way and that on some of these issues, and we're not quite sure where he stands on Ukraine. We're not sure how ardently he'll back Israel. If this is a clue to that, that's interesting. But it is the president's call, and given our experience so far with J.D. Vance, whatever the president says goes, and he will be very good at adapting himself to whatever is necessary for the moment. He's proved that already.
Point well taken. Mike Pompeo, former CIA director, former Secretary of State, your thoughts on the potential influence of this future vice president if they win?
Sure. Well, look, vice presidents are always in the room. Often they're last after everybody else leaves, so they get that opportunity. But, this debate on Ukraine, I remember the same debate on Afghanistan back when the president was campaigning in 2016. Everybody said President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan. What we actually delivered was an effective policy that kept Afghanistan going, that got most of our soldiers home. We went from 15,000 to about 2,500 on our watch, and we didn't screw it up. We didn't leave billions of dollars in equipment behind and get 13 Americans killed. I'm confident when JD becomes the vice president, which I'm confident he will, I'm confident he will see that you have to actually implement, execute. There's a reality to American national security. I know President Trump understands that and took it to heart when he was in office. I'm confident the vice president will as well.
One other point I want to make before we go to our next joining in is Brett Baer, is that he did not ultimately choose, or President Trump, anyone who ran against him. He didn't choose Marco Rubio, who was in the last round, Nikki Haley, Governor Nikki Haley, Doug Burgum, all of these people, Tim Scott, all of these people who ran against him. And we know from things that the former president said that was an issue for him. He didn't like that anyone ran against him. He didn't like that there was even a Republican debate process. He felt that was something that shouldn't happen, and here we are, as he has now crossed that threshold and is indeed the nominee and has chosen an independent person, outspoken person to be his vice president. Let's bring in special report anchor and executive editor Brett Baer and get his thoughts on this big news breaking afternoon. Hi, Brett.
Hey, Martha. I tell you what, the J.D. Vance pick, there was a lot of folks that thought from the beginning that he was in the pole position, but there was a lot of intrigue. And this was a very tight secret that really stayed till the afternoon, right before the Truth Social post that the president put out. I think that what you heard from Don Jr. there is actually what they're really most fired up about, is J.D. Vance on the trail, J.D. Vance making the case for MAGA, J.D. Vance going on to different TV shows and essentially litigating the case for the president's agenda, and also the possibility, the prospect of a vice presidential debate against Kamala Harris. They like the pitching of J.D. Vance versus Kamala Harris and the one-on-one. Obviously, you've talked about some of the concerns that some of the moderates in the Republican Party have had about J.D. Vance, but for the most important part part of this. It's loyalty for President Trump, former President Trump, and someone who can take over the job. And the biggest storyline here that, this parlor game of who was going to be the VP pick was always a big story. But the biggest story today is that this nomination is in the bag for former President Donald Trump, arguably the biggest political comeback that you could ever imagine from January 6th until this moment.
Unbelievable comeback, and that shows you his leadership skills and the will of the Lord. Never discount the will of the Lord.
Is ripping the J.D. Vance choice with statements, etc. And we'll hear from President Biden, I'm sure, on that today.
And that was demonstrated
right now,
the other night.
Former President Trump is in the position where he's in the lead.
It is an extraordinary story, Brett, as you point out. 2 impeachments, how many counts? 90-something counts of indictments against him. Another case dropped today. Let's go to Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, who's on the floor for Virginia right now. Let's watch.
D.C. is America's top place to do business. Home to 850,000 of the greatest Americans, our military and veteran heroes. Home to Washington, Madison, Monroe, the first governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the voice of liberty, Patrick Henry, and home to Thomas Jefferson, who penned the most immortal words that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Proudly, as governor of Virginia, along with our great chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, Rich Anderson, we cast our delegate votes for the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and his vice president, J.D. Vance.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Virginia, 42 votes, President Trump, 6 votes to be cast pursuant to the rules and procedures of the convention. Michigan, 55 delegates.
Praise the Lord.
Madam Chairman, there you have it. Virginia, the governor, Glenn Youngkin, enthusiastically placing the delegates into this convention for President Trump and J.D. Vance. Obviously, this is a job that he was in contention for. His name was really prominently pushed by a lot of people. It was not his position for right now, but he's certainly a promising figure for the future of the party, Brett.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to see him really work those Rust Belt states, get in a bus tour. He'll work Pennsylvania, where he is, there's a lot of MAGA folks there that look to J.D. Vance that are going to enjoy this pick. I think that in reality, the biggest thing is that former President Trump is going to get on that stage on Thursday, and what he says as far as reaching across the inner party split, I think is going to be interesting. And also the talk that he's going to try to unify the country in the wake of what happened Saturday. This pick is going to take a lot of oxygen in the media. A lot of people are going to dig into J.D. Vance, and there's going to be all kinds of talk about it. But in reality, it is former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden head-to-head for the next few months.
Indeed. Former President Trump said at one point along the trail, like, oh, the vice president doesn't matter all that much. And Karl Rove just laid that out in terms of the history of how it plays out. But for J.D. Vance, this is a huge day. And this is a 4-year term if it is secured by President Trump. So I think the vice presidential pick is significant for that reason as well. This will be someone who will be groomed in the party to potentially be the nominee next time around in 2028. So, Brett, thank you so much. We will see you later this evening. Look forward to it. So with me now here in Milwaukee, Outkick founder Clay Travis joins us, and the 5 co-hosts Jessica Turlock, former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and former
Sorry about that, folks.
Staff Carl Rove. Great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Jessica and Clay. Great to see you in person as well. You know, it is a remarkable afternoon for a number of reasons, and I am continually struck, as we all are, Jessica, that 48 hours ago there was an attempt. All right, we're gonna go down to Aisha. She's working the floor, and we're grateful for it. And she's got Governor Youngkin now, so let's go listen.
Governor, how do you feel about J.D. Vance?
I'm very excited about Senator Vance. He's an extraordinary leader. He is going to bring so much to the ticket, and most importantly, I know that he will work hard for Americans. It's a ticket that will win, and it's a ticket that will lead us into opportunity, lead us into prosperity, and most importantly, stand strong for America.
Do you expect to serve in the president's cabinet in some other capacity? Would you?
Today is all about President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. I was so excited to cast our delegation's votes for them today, and most importantly, to see the unity in this room. America's coming together, and it is so exciting.
How will you help them win Virginia? Virginia is something that the president really wants to take this year. How will you help?
So Virginia's in play. All the polls show that it's neck and neck, and we're going to go to work. We're going to go to work to make sure that Virginians understand the opportunities in front of us. The same things we did in 2021, where we took a state that honestly hadn't elected a Republican statewide for 12 years, and we brought people together around opportunity, around educational excellence, around backing the blue, and around government that works for you. That's what President Trump stands for.
Go Trump.
I believe that Virginia can
Go Trump and Vance.
Trump, the next president of the United States.
With this ticket now, Trump and J.D. Vance can bring in those independents and those moderates that you're looking for.
Oh, I do. This is about the future of America. And as Americans discuss the opportunities that are in front of them, they know that they are unbridled during the Trump administration, and that they have been constrained during the Biden administration. People feel it, people know it, and that's what this election is about. It's about hope, it's about the future, and I look forward to not just watching Virginia, but America elect Donald Trump the next president.
And right.
For the third Republican presidential convention in a row, Donald J. Trump is his party's nominee, and rarefied company, and all the more rarefied when you consider what happened a little more than 48 hours ago, an attempt on his life that had Donald Trump's head been turned even a millimeter to the left, we'd be talking about something far different right now. Happily, blessedly, we are not. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. An historic day for a nominee of a party where he hopes the third time will once again be the charm, just as it was for when Grover Cleveland, the last guy who was nominated 3 times in a row, interrupted on the second time because he, although won the popular vote, he had failed to win the electoral vote, but he did come storming back. And, of course, at this time, Donald J. Trump is hoping to imitate and do that all over again. Aisha Hosni right now on the floor of the convention with the latest. Aisha.
The following candidate received the...
Hey, Neil, good to see you. Well, we have talked to just about everyone here on the floor, except for J.D. Vance. No one has eyes on him. Presumably, he is with the former president right now. We were able to talk to his delegation from Ohio and Governor Mark DeWine. And I had asked him earlier in the day how he felt. He said he had a good feeling and that he was already sort of thinking about who he might want to replace the senator with if he was indeed tapped. He doesn't have any names on his mind just yet, but he'd already been thinking about that. We also caught up with Don Jr. a few moments ago. He talked about how scary that moment was when he first found out that his father had been shot. He said it took him about 90 minutes to even figure out that his father was indeed okay because there was just an information block. And then eventually he was able to talk to his father, the former president, and told him that he was, a hero. I can't say the word on national TV, but said that he was very brave for the way he reacted in that moment. And then I asked him about J.D. Vance, the VP pick, of course, a big favorite of Don Jr.'s. And I asked him about the criticism out there that perhaps this junior senator from Ohio isn't prepared. The Speaker is actually speaking, so let's go ahead and listen into the House Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to introduce the Attorney General, and there goes the teleprompter.
I can't. I should back to you.
So, Neil, we're hearing that the former president and his new vice president, President Pick, might be coming out into the convention center in just about 30 minutes to take the podium here and cheer the crowd, and basically the former president presenting his new VP pick in just about the next 30 minutes. So we're right next to the stage, and we'll flag it for you if that happens. But I want to tell you again that I've been talking to folks here, including Glenn Youngkin, who was on the short list as well, Don Jr., who said that, J.D. Vance was a favorite of his. I've been asking everyone about the criticism of the junior senator from Ohio, that he might be too young for the job, because obviously after this weekend's events, it's even more focused now that you need someone on the ticket that could become president immediately if, God forbid, the worst would happen. And Don Jr. threw it back at me and said, look, my father didn't have any political experience, any D.C. experience, and that is exactly what landed him in the White House in the first place, and that is what he was looking for. He wanted someone who would be loyal to him, someone who would understand what American families are going through. I talked to another colleague of mine on the Hill, Representative Corey Mills from Florida. He said the same thing. He feels like he and J.D. Vance grew up in the very same way, didn't have a lot growing up, and that is the one way, the one thing that's going to help J.D. Vance connect with Americans out there. For anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's got quite a story, but that will be the key to be able to connect with those families out there that are having a hard time making ends meet right now. And the economy has been the #1 issue across the board, wherever you go, whoever you talk to across this country. So that is what they're going to hit on when it comes to this new VP pick. They feel like experience, that will come with time, that will come under the former president if he does indeed take the White House, but they feel like they've made the right choice.
Value add to the ticket.
You guys need independence. You need young, women, suburban women. Yes. You need people that Trump needs help in those demographics a little bit. Do you think that JD can offer him that, and to be able to take states like Virginia that are now in play? Trump wants to expand the map here and not just focus on the swing states, but states like Virginia.
No, I mean, you think about what the left is offering. They're offering a California elitist, a West Coast elitist, and an East Coast elitist. Here we have in our new vice presidential pick a Rust Belt Republican, somebody who has been in a flyover state, right? Not only is he going to bring that poor blue-collar working-class American vibe to the ticket, but you see where Trump is connecting with voters, with young women, with Gen Zs, millennials, suburban women. You see where there's so many people involved in the campaign and the effort. They are really reaching every single demographic, and it's worrying the left. You see that in how they're starting to communicate. I think that they have a lot to be worried about, and the future is looking very bright for the Republican Party.
Final question here. What kind of a message can we expect from the RNC this week? We know the former First Lady is calling on unity. The former president has been asking everyone to stick to their pre-planned speeches, not to talk about the assassination attempt as much. We know he'll be talking about that when he speaks on Thursday. What do you expect this week? Do you feel like there is going to be a pretty strong message of uniting this country, not just the party, but the country?
Absolutely. not only has the message here at the RNC been just, hey, it's time to move forward and we have to unite as a party, but it's bigger than that. America First means bringing in young, old, white, black, Republican, Democrat, Independent. Everybody is welcome under the America First banner. And the message going forward is unity, because that's what it's going to take if we're going to get this country back on track.
All right, Kat Cafe, Congresswoman from Florida, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you. Neil, back to you.
All right, thank you very much for that. You know, in selecting J.D. Vance, much has been made of the fact that he's so young. Well, he's very young. We haven't had a vice presidential candidate this young. I guess you'd have to go back to almost, 1900 when William McKinley chose Teddy Roosevelt. Of course, sadly, William McKinley, as he started out his second term, was assassinated, and the 42-year-old Teddy Roosevelt emerged as President of the United States. You obviously hope that history doesn't repeat itself here, but young men have been thrust into this position sometimes earlier than is planned. That worked out pretty well, with Teddy Roosevelt arguably considered one of our better presidents. Sean O'Brien joins you right now. In case that doesn't ring a bell to a lot of you, I should point out he is the Teamsters General President, and you're probably thinking, then what the heck is he doing at the Republican National Convention? Well, he's going to speak to that convention tonight, but first he's speaking to us. Sean, very good to have you.
Great to see you, sir.
You could almost look like a fish out of water. How do you feel there?
I feel great. I feel very confident. Look, I'm here representing working people in America. I'm here representing the greatest union in the entire country. And my message is clear. We want to make certain that people understand, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent, how important it is to respect working class America, and also, you know, to encourage bipartisan participation on issues that face working people.
Obviously, you raised this issue with Donald Trump. You want the same opportunity to speak to Democrat conventioners when they gather in August. What has Joe Biden told you about that convention?
I haven't heard anything, sir. The last time I was on your show, we talked about how we asked both the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention. The Republican National Convention welcomed me. I'm still waiting to hear on the Democratic National Convention. And look, it's controversial. We understand that, but you know, the reality is our system's broken right now, and we're divided right down the middle. I've got a constituency of 1.3 million members. Half vote Republican, half vote Democrat. So we've got to serve both equally.
So you have not heard back from the White House on speaking at the convention, the Democratic convention, after all this time? We spoke first over a month ago.
We did, yes. No, we haven't heard anything. Crickets.
What does that tell you? Are you offended?
No, I'm not offended at all. Look, I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I have no problem working with people that are going to help support working people. Look, I'm getting criticized from the left. I'm getting criticized from the far right. And at the end of the day, you know, we've got to do what's best for this country, number one, and working people. And I believe it's to work bipartisan-wise to find solutions to problems. Often, two times, you know,
and I agree.
Each side, and you know, there's a lot.
Having been secretary of the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen and Kentuckians for Better Schools and president of the Teachers Association when I taught school,
make certain that we protect it. We need to make sure
both parties need to be involved in making America great.
I was very interested in hearing from you and letting conventioneers hear from you. He didn't wait a month to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm sure he got criticized for when the announcement happened. You know, the far right, you know, called him to rescind the invitation, and thankfully he had the courage and conviction not to do that. I hope the Democrats give us the same opportunity. You know, we've supported the Democrats for the last 20 years, unwavering, much to you know, a lot of dissatisfaction within the union. And again, I'll state clearly, I'm a lifelong Democrat, but you know, times have changed. You know, wants and needs need to be addressed regardless whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or an Independent.
So, you know, you're also an astute reader of the tea leaves here. And you know, in the past, regardless what leadership at your union or other unions have recommended for president, the sort of rank and file, the core members of which you started out as one.
Look at the little pup, Jim.
Prefer and like Republicans, certainly by much greater numbers than was reflected in union endorsements. Is the same true at Teamsters? You have many more members who like Donald Trump than they do Joe Biden.
Well, I don't know if that's accurate. I mean, we're doing polling right now. We've done a lot of polling as far as, reaching out to a certain demographic. We've also done polling, straw poll meetings within the 331 locals that we represent in the United States. And currently, by the end of this month, we have a publication that goes out to 1.6 million active and retired Teamsters, which will have a QR code, which will give us a good gauge of where we're at. But it is neck and neck right now. And again, it's a decision that's going to be made.
I have to thank the Teamsters myself when I was at the University of Kentucky, and with the family, and I had to drive a truck and get dispensation by the Teamsters Union to be able to do so, to earn a living, to work my way through school. So I have great respect for the Teamsters Union and what they did. Driving National Biscuit Company, biscuits and cookies all across about 13 counties in central Kentucky.
And I'm just wondering, given the fact that you've had no response from the White House, maybe eventually you will, maybe after this interview you will, it just seems weird, doesn't it?
It just seems strange that, we wouldn't be given an opportunity. And, this day and age, for people to get upset because you want your voice heard on behalf of a diverse membership, it's kind of discouraging. But, I think you know me by now. I don't take anything personal. And look, we'll deal with the cards we have, and we'll make the best decision we possibly can make on behalf of our members and on the working class America.
What do you think of Donald Trump's vice president pick, J.D. Vance? Young man, all of 39.
So J.D. J.D. Vance, the short time that we've worked together, he's been great on Teamster issues. He has co-sponsored an airline manufacturing bill that addresses outsourcing of critical airline maintenance to China. He's also supported paid sick leave for our railroad workers. If you remember that situation a couple of years ago, where they weren't getting sick time, he stepped right up. He's also been very vocal and supportive of holding employers accountable who try and skirt their obligation under an independent contractor model known as DSP. So he's been right there on all our issues. We've publicly stated it. And look, at this day and age, there's nothing better than having a U.S. Marine represented as a vice president candidate. Youth is great. Oftentimes, people are overlooked because of their age, but they should be looked at because of their ability.
I get that all the time, Sean. So you're so young, but you're young. Anyway, what is your goal?
You and I both.
What is your goal tonight?
Look, my goal tonight is to let everybody know how important the working class America is, how important we have been, and I want to encourage people to have an open mind, to work together. It's unfortunate this country is divided right down the middle, and we've got other world leaders looking at us, laughing at us because they know there's a fracture in the infrastructure of the United States. And look, we're not always going to agree on everything, but at the end of the day, when there's situations where we can come together, work together, and support working class America's, but more importantly, support the greatest nation in the world, that's my goal tonight.
All right, so when you look at the
Amen.
Democrats here, I was
godly principles.
That, obviously Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee. There's still people who doubt that that's going to be the case. Many of your colleagues in the union movement have been quietly looking for alternatives, convinced that Joe Biden is a losing candidate, and they're looking at other names even now, even after this weekend's horrific developments for Donald Trump and the near assassination. What are your thoughts on that? Would you be more suited to talk at a Democratic convention if they let you, if it were a different nominee?
No, I'm ready to speak whoever the nominee is, whether it's President Biden or whoever that may be moving forward. And you are correct. There's been a lot of talk about other unions looking for alternative candidates. Been a lot of legislatures that have been looking for an alternative candidate. The reality of it is whoever is a nominee, whether it's President Biden or anybody else, we're hopeful to get an audience with them and explain, what our current concerns are, what our wants and needs are, just like we're doing here this week.
Amen.
So when you
my membership, look, there's no there's no disputing the facts. Inflation's high. We've got to curb that. You know, there is layoffs throughout our system in different
We hope you enjoyed this program.
So, you know, sometimes
and
the picture that's painted isn't always accurate. But
join us for other videos. Travels with Dr. John Stevenson, former Superintendent of Education, Commonwealth of Kentucky. And Miss June and I appreciate your watching. And just remember, red, yellow, brown, black, and white, we're all precious in Jesus' sight. God's will and God's way. Join us at www.begottensson.com and www.godspeaks.biz and small j, small s, 750-0000 @ Phone number is 859-750-0000. God bless you and have a great day.
I am definitely going to wear a tie tonight, sir. I wear a tie most of the time, but you know, I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to look like I was wearing the same thing twice. So plus, you know, I'm a working guy. No, we don't always wear ties.
True.